Hello, this is Helen Reed here, and this is another episode of the Evolving Orgasms Series. And today I have the incredible Khadoma. Am I saying your name right? Khadoma?
Yes, Khadoma Colomby, yes.
With me. And she caught my attention online a little while ago, I think, with her incredible pussy portraits. And I saw this woman who was sharing like actual portraits of these beautiful colors and just incredible art of vulvas. And I was like, oh my God, this is divine. And yeah, so she is the creator of the pussy portrait, the pussy project, and she is generally amazing at guiding women with womb work and embodiment. So welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I am thrilled to be here talking to you. Absolutely. And the name of your podcast, Legs Wide Open, absolutely caught my eye. And it just feels like a really beautiful and powerful commingling and co-merging right here and now. So thank you.
My pleasure. So we're obviously here to talk about vulvas and and orgasms and the journey of like evolution and involution that occurs when we like open our bodies and our hearts and our yonis. And I feel like you have, I mean, from having a chat with you last week, like there's just so much that we could go into and talk about, and like so many different facets that we could explore. But I wonder if you if I can know a little bit about your story and about how you got here, how you got to be spending your time like working with women and in this way, and also like how did the Pussy Portrait project evolve, and like how is your sexual journey, like where have you been guided on that, and in relation to orgasms, obviously very important to talk about the orgasms.
Yes, all of those things totally intermingle. And so my personal journey, my personal kind of story with my own body is that, you know, I came into life, I feel like a deeply feminine feeling woman, very sensitive, very sensual, even as a little girl, right? Just really connected to nature and in the feeling element of experiencing the world, intuition, senses, all of those things. And you know, as I moved into early adolescence, and started feeling my body start to change, you know, had no guidance around that, right? I think that so many of us as women come into these bodies and don't have the initiation piece. We don't have the guidance piece around sex, around our bodies, around the sacredness of our bodies, right? You know, when we talk about our, you know, our vaginas and our vulvas as young children, like we don't have a name for them, right? It's just said that's down there. It's the private part, right? It just, all of this shame starts to be wrapped up in our bodies so early on, right? And that secrecy. And I think for me, although I grew up in a very open environment with my mom, she didn't ever talk to me about sex or the sacredness of my body, or, the shifts that were starting to happen with my body. So it was very free, but in that boundarylessness, my spirit just kind of got involved in all of these very early sexual experiences that I had no idea what I was doing. And, came mainly from a place of my own inner longing to be loved. And that's, I think, as young girls and with boys, that's how we get love. That's how we get attention, right? Is following this, this path of getting close, and then depending on social circles, right, sex just becomes a part of that. So I feel like from a very early age, I was opened up and brought into a situation where sex was not pleasurable and really equated with my body freezing and not really having that internal mechanism to respond with consent or not. A lot of the time, there was a lot of alcohol involved, So I think this is a piece really to so many of the women that I know in my generation went through this period of time where like sex just happened, right? And so I think from very early on, there was like this freeze response that's taken me a long time to unravel. And now I'm 50, and I just turned 50. And honestly, I feel like the most liberated and sexually turned on and tuned in that I've ever been, because of the healing and the unraveling that was able to happen over time within my body to be able to land and discover what I really desire without the fear.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
Mm-hmm.
The piece around like the transition from girl to woman, I feel like really close to my heart. And especially right now, I've got a daughter who is 10, or she's 10 in a few weeks. And and I noticed that a lot of mothers of her friends, and we're talking about what can we do to like really support this process and really help this generation feel supported as they transition to become a woman, and know, like you say, the sacredness of their bodies and how everything is unfolding like perfectly. And that feels so special. And and also I feel a lot of fear around it, because I feel like I feel like I really want to help this process, and for her experience of it to be different to mine. And not that like I never think that it's our parents like did, I always feel, the best that they could, and every generation like makes this this step forward, like this step on the evolutionary journey. But yeah, that feels very it feels amazing to be in the position to be able to start to support girls in this way at this part of their journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about the freeze response, this also resonates a lot, and I'm sure it resonates for lots of women.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that lots of women might be listening thinking, how did you go from being able to
Yeah.
to be frozen and to like have you know, to be like alcohol fueled sexual experiences like this is
Mm-hmm.
so common from my lived experience. And
Yes.
what and I know that you've said like this is something which obviously unravels over time. Are there like key kind of turning points or like catalysts that supported that process?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would say, you know, for me, it was really in my early 30s when I started having a very devoted partner who was very patient and present with me, that even the idea of that kind of stuff starting to be like, oh, this isn't just how it should be, started to come into my mind, right? Because I'm also very orgasmic. I mean, I've always been really orgasmic. So it's not the orgasm. Like once I get there, I'm like multi-orgasmic, you know, like once I'm on that side of the fence, my body is just like, yes. So it's not the experience of pleasure itself, right? It was the point of like entering into a sexual intimate moment and then being kind of freezing in response to that, or not participating in a way that I know that I can, kind of just letting it happen, but willingly, you know? So from that moment to the point where I was like, okay, I'm in, was a period of what I feel like was kind of, I was playing out this disorientation and this freeze response from other times that I couldn't say anything about that, right? So there was this little window that I found myself in again and again. But so it was this one man, this one partner who's still my husband, you know, we're together 19 years later. That was really open and safe and willing. And it was just, honestly, I feel like in a lot of ways, the repetition of being in a safe place and being the body just playing that out as many times that it needed to, with also the immense pleasure and intimacy that was happening with this person at the same time, to unravel that stuff from my body and my nervous system. So I think that was a big piece to it, and that devotion, that mutual devotion. And it brought problems between us for sure, you know, because the male, right, has their own insecurities about pushing the female. If they're, you know, if they're a conscious, quote unquote, conscious man, right, they're dealing with their own stuff around what happened before in our generation between men and women, right, girls and boys. So it brought stuff up for us both to unravel, I think. So that's one piece. Another piece for me was really getting involved with doing womb healing, and womb connection with myself and for myself, first of all. And now it's something that I teach and lead women through. So it's something that I'm continually doing and unraveling. And that piece is a really powerful coming home into this area of our bodies, the womb space, this place between our hips, which has held so much of the trauma that we've experienced in our bodies through our sexual trauma. And So we begin to distance ourselves and disconnect from this part of our bodies because it's holding these stories, right? It's holding these painful stories. And I believe even generationally, like our mother's stories, our grandmother's stories, held in this space in our womb. And to do the journey and in the lifelong journey, I feel like, of connecting into this place, getting to know her, anchoring and thawing and releasing and doing the work of healing and unraveling through conscious work and healing work with the womb space has allowed me to occupy this place in a way that it is now mine. It's sovereign. All those that entered before are no longer there. So that thawing of both the energy space as well as the actual physical space to then be able to discover more of my pleasure and feel empowered in learning more about what does my yoni like and how does she like to be touched, and that self relationship with sensuality and sexuality as a part of that. Like this, we're taught, right, to learn these things with our partner and give them to our partner, and this obligation and all of the layers that comes into sex, right, in between men and women. In particular, I don't know about the relationships outside of between men and women around all these power dynamics, but for men and women, right, there's this obligation piece, there's this, for centuries, carrying these centuries of like what women needed to do to basically even survive. You had to have a husband and you had to please them because you couldn't have your own money. No way you could get food. I mean, there's just like so many layers, right? I'm totally going off in a whole other direction with that, but it's also tied into this space of really like sexual sovereignty and learning that our sexuality is our life force energy, and it's our creativity, and it's our intuition, and it's our desire for life, and it's ours, and taking that back to discover, who am I? What is in here? What is womb speaking to me? What is my yoni, my pussy actually like? What is her story? And just reclaiming all of these pieces into our own body so that we then can learn how we want to give it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. That feels so beautiful. And so many times when you were talking, I was getting all these goosebumps, and I was just reflecting when you were just finishing up that there's been, when I said, what do you feel were like the catalysts or like the supportive, what supported your process, and then one of them was the presence of this conscious, devoted man, and then the other one was this journey like deep into your feminine essence and your connection with your femininity and your womb space, and like reclaiming that sovereignty. And that, because I feel like that just feels to me like the kind of holy grail, like that both of those happening simultaneously, like that just feels so special that you had that experience.
Yeah.
And yeah, and this whole when you were saying about ancestral trauma being held in our wombs, I really also resonate very deeply with this. And I think that I was talking to a woman last night, and she was saying, like, how do you find the space? Like, how do you have the space to go on these emotional journeys? And I know what she means, because when life is full and you don't have space, and then we were talking and talking a little bit about how our generation is suddenly here like very full, and I feel holding like thousands of years of trauma in our
Yeah.
cells,
Yeah.
in our, which now we're being invited to confront and like integrate and process fully.
Yes. Yes.
And that's really daunting. And so the energy of like, oh, like I know that all this is here. Like I know I've got a womb full of stuff that needs my attention, and it feels so like massive. I think it can feel,
Yeah.
you know, really huge.
Yes.
And I think that's why, to remember that this is, we get to be alive now, and there's all this information and there's all this support, and we have like the like an opportunity that hasn't presented itself before, I don't think, as widely anyway as it is presenting itself now. And and I think as a woman, it's been similar for me, like looking at my womb and connecting with my womb, and what makes me a woman, and what and everything which helps bring me back into my body. Has been like, everything else can kind of be very distracting, I think, and it's very tempting to be distracted by all of the craziness of life. But then when I'm thinking about this woman who was talking to me last night, like if there is this kind of, I mean, it could be even looked as like a treasure chest of you know, incredible wisdom and beauty and depth that is like inviting us in and like drawing us in.
Yeah, it is. It's like this very deep sacred seat for us as women, you know, and in the process of the womb work, right? It's like going down there and seeing what's there and what it feels like, and then recreating a temple space there. And do a process called walking the bowl, and it's like seeing who else is in here and just smudging or, you know, clearing it out with all the presence of, you know, what else is in here right now that I can clear out to reclaim this space as my own. And the generational piece, like these layers of unraveling and unspiraling, right? Not only our experiencing in our lives, and I believe other lifetimes that we carry, right? But then the generational pieces to, it's almost like pouring out a dirty bowl of water so that you can really feel the clarity of the vessel that this is. And this vessel for so long for us as women has been just related to childbirth. And everything else around it has been shamed. Our cycles, our periods, you know, even birth itself has been like clamped down and shut down in so many ways as the powerful experiences is. And then our sexuality and our eros and our desire and our pleasure. And I have found doing the womb work and having, you know, the intimate connection with that part of my body, that now I can kind of just drop down in a couple of breaths and I'm occupying this temple. I'm sitting on my throne in this temple. And from there, like I can feel my pleasure, right? I can roll my hips and there's pleasure right there. And that pleasure is not for like, oh, now I want to go have sex, although that's, you know, amazing too, but it's for, how can I bring this to my moment right now? How can I bring this life force and this creativity to my experience of being alive right in this moment? And when we're feeling more of that yummy juiciness, then orgasm is just more available, right? It's not such a long journey to get to because you're in that kind of ecstatic, but I'm very grounded. So, feeling that ecstasy in between my hips and having that be in the pulse of the universe, which is also this erotic pulse, then there's just like this more of a life force to allow ourselves to be unfolding into, and orgasm becomes a part of that and not something like this big separate thing that we're trying to get, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like that, like living orgasmically, really, like not,
Mm-hmm.
but not in a, like, it doesn't, like you say, it doesn't have to be like we're not going for like intense sensation all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this like grounded, sustainable, like juicy energy that we get to be in and we get to live from no matter what we're experiencing, really. Like
Yes. Yes.
we can make that our base and our foundation, then we're kind of home.
Yes, and I think too, for us as women within all the busyness, as you were saying, and it it can be this grounding rod, right? So if we're feeling overwhelmed with everything that's going on, if there's a connection there and you can take breaths there, it's like, okay, just dropping back in within a minute, or, a few breaths of like, okay, anchoring. This is the sacred throne. This is my sacred feminine. Or if you're, for me, if I'm feeling like, kind of depressed or off, it's a tool to be like, dropping back home, right?
Yeah, yeah, amazing. And when you were talking, well, there are all different things that are coming, but when you were talking about the like the disconnection from our womb and our cycles and our well, and all lots of different things, then I was reminded that we actually rescheduled our podcast because we were both bleeding last week, and that just feels like so beautiful that we were able to do that, and that we were both bleeding at the same time, and we said, actually, like, this feels much better to do it next week. And I'm working with my dad in my business at the moment, and we're kind of partnering to bring this kind of balance with the like feminine and masculine energies, and it's really amazing, actually. But I've been explaining to him, like, what you're going to get from me this week is going to be different to what you get next week. It's like, oh, I never thought about it like that. Like,
I love that.
It's just not. We're kind of, well, I was anyway trained to be consistent like a man. Like this is how you get by in life. This is how you get make money. This is how you're successful. This is how you need to do it. And and now there's this like unraveling going on where it's like, actually, this is not how I'm wired. I'm not. Some people might be wired like that, but I'm not wired like that, and my body and my nervous system don't like that. So
absolutely. I think it is so powerful and important for us as women to really know our cycles and align ourselves to that rhythm, and this is also a big part of my own personal work and what I've taught since I was in my early 30s, also being a very emotionally and energetically moved woman by my hormones. And so for about 20 years, I've been really intimately connected with learning about and loving myself and how I am and how to support myself through each week, right? And being able to see this as a sacred navigational system as a woman, not as something to resent or feel like a victim to, but something that's really our superpowers as women, because each week has something so beautiful to give us, right? And it's our fucking magic, really. I mean, pre-bleed and early bleed week, when we're out given the space, we're more psychic, we're more reflective. It's that deep kind of witchy time. But we're taught to push through that, to ignore it, to stuff it down, and that we're wrong for needing more rest or taking that time, right? So I'm seeing now there are so many more women talking about this reorientation with the cycles. And it's such a powerful part of our wisdom as women to really deepen into. And I love that you're teaching your dad about it.
Oh yeah, it's lush. And I remember, like, I was on the contraceptive pill for probably at least 11 years. And I know that many people have been on it for many more years than that.
Yeah.
But I remember I used to roll my packs of pills together because I didn't want a period, and it was very convenient for me to just roll the pills together. And my GP used to say, it's no problem, you can do that for like 6 in a row, and you can and it was I thought it was great, and then but I was just completely disconnecting from my body, and probably when I reflect on it, that helped me to kind of block out everything that was happening and everything that I was holding in my womb, because it's kind of had a kind of numbing effect, I guess.
Yeah, it's, again, it's that quote unquote convenience, right? To fit into our lives, we want to skip our periods. We're like, okay, how about we reframe and restructure the way that we're supposed to show up for our lives? That is such another reorientation and reclamation that we get to do now as women. That something that's been shamed and shoved under the rug, and just like, we don't talk about that. We don't, our education around it was shit, it's like it's again, like, for our daughters at this point in time, being able to model and share and talk about these things in a way that's going to empower this generation and the future generations of girls and women, right? So we're such bridges in so many ways right now, I feel like, for girls around us.
One other thing that was coming to me when you were moving your hips and talking about like accessing this juice and this life force, I live in the south of Spain, and I know that different countries have all different climates, and it's all kind of all over the place, and some have like too much water and some have not enough water. But I live in a very dry climate that's like every year we have like less rain and less rain and less rain, and I look at these dry riverbeds and I just feel that there's this connection between dry yonis and dry riverbeds.
Yes. Yes.
And I would just love to know your thoughts.
I absolutely feel that. I actually just said that to my husband the other night. I was like, the dry earth and the dry pussy are like a mirror of each other. It's a lack of feminine, juicy, sensual, sexual, sovereign life force in the cultural leadership of the last few centuries here, where starting with the witch burnings and the religious takeover of the priests and the dominant power structures of all of that stuff, which shut down completely sexuality and made our bodies sinful and tight-lipped in both ways, mouth and pussy lips, right? That has driven us to where we are now on the planet with our relationship with the environment and what we've done, right? to create the dry riverbeds. And I feel like as women, as we're coming back into our sovereignty and exploring the possibilities of our own sensuality and, self-care and how that relates to pleasure, not even sexual pleasure, but just feeling pleasure, and feeling like it's okay to be in pleasure and take care of ourselves over all the service that we've been trained to give as the priority, right? But we'll hopefully have time for that to become the shift over, which leads to a more erotic connection to nature, which will then allow the rivers to flow again, right? Within our own bodies and within Gaia. They feel very connected to me. And I love that you said that.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels so, yeah, because then I start having these like sensations of, like you say, like the water's starting to flow, and then the water's starting to flow on the earth, and then it's just like,
yes,
like deliciousness.
Yes. Yeah.
Now I know that you said that you've always been orgasmic and like multiple orgasms, like, but and obviously your connection with like and that window between like going into an intimate sexual experience and the getting to then the like multi-orgasmic state, your experience of that has changed, but like physiologically and like your like physical sensational experience, I would love to know, like, has the way that orgasms feel to you in your body shifted? Like, has the sensation changed? Like, how and obviously honoring the fact that they can be very different and unique in themselves, but
I mean, I think for me, I am more present in my full being. I mean, I think orgasm is a physical thing that happens, right? And we can be connected to it or not. So I feel like for me, I am more present and connected through the experience of the orgasms. There's a deeper intimacy that I am more present with in my intimacy with my partner. Of course, I'm 50, so physiologically, things are starting to shift for me as far as like my walls are thinning and I'm not just naturally as juicy all the time, which is shocking to me. But it's this reorientation to like, okay, these physical things are shifting for me, but my emotional erotic self is quote unquote more on board and better than I've ever felt in my life. And I want to say that because I think so often there's all these myths around midlife and women, and you just stop wanting sex. And that hasn't been my experience at all. So there's a much deeper sense of emotional intimacy that I'm feeling. And it may be really subtle to my partner, but for me, I'm really feeling it. And with that, I've had a lot more laughter with my orgasms, which has been really fun. Like, especially in, multiple orgasms, I just get to the point where I just start giggling because it's so like as a different way of releasing energy. And so at this point, I feel like I'm really at the point of attuning more to my internal landscape and how that's shifting than the actual physical piece and how that that's shifting, right? For me, it's more of like a all over like integrated self rather than splintering off during sex. I am bringing my whole self to it more and more and more.
I love that. And I love the laughter that just I find that the sounds that come like really change, and I've also had some experiences where I just am laughing, and it's like when I feel like before I was diving into this work and really like connecting with my body, I was very I would make the kind of sounds like that I thought I should make, you know, like ah, ah. But and then when I started to just allow whatever wanted to come, like sometimes the sounds that come are just like, you know, like ah, like really like
yes.
I mean, they sound much better when they're actually like
Yes. Yeah.
but they're really loud, and they're like,
Yep.
I live in the middle of a village, and they're like, I feel like they're like rippling out, and it just
Yes.
feels like that sound that comes feels like if that wasn't there, the whole experience would feel like it had like a lid on it. Like
Right. It's the primal expression. It's like what your primal expression in that moment, right? And rather than like, yeah, this is how I'm supposed to sound because this is how porn sounds, or you know, it's like I just read something about that. It's like that's nobody fucking sounds like that, you know? And like the porn, right? It's like so, and that's connected also to like the connection between womb and voice and speaking our truth and our authentic expression, authentic release, right? Is just feeling the freedom to let the sounds come out and not trying to be anybody else.
yeah. And sometimes the sounds are very like what I would, because they're like, they're kind of like, they sound, you know, that sounds kind of glorious and wonderful. But some of them are really like guttural and like, you know, like the very guttural kind of sound.
Yes.
And then
animal body.
Then it's like, and it's interesting, like the variety of different sounds that come.
Yeah. And I think that's a piece to feeling safe and to just allow all of ourselves to come through in that moment. And you know, I think there's so much around sex that we're miseducated around through culture and movies, and only, you know, the things that we do see around sex growing up and all of that. And it's a very complicated thing to do, you know, as far as not do, but to be in, right? That's layered with so many different elements of our working through our own insecurities and our own past traumas. And, you know, I think that it's a beautiful playground to work through and work with so much of our own internal healing, and have pleasure be a part of that.
The other thing that I was remembering was when you were talking about like tight-lipped, like the lips of the vulva, and also the how it's connected to our, did you say, you said mouths or voice? And so because I've really noticed the connection between like opening like my connection with my yoni and then my jaw, and like the lips soften, and like over time like there's such this connection between the throat, the voice, the jaw, and the like whole pelvic area.
Yes, there is definitely so much. I mean, it's interesting if you look at images of the pelvis and images of the larynx and the vocal box, they look very, very similar, like almost identical anatomically, which is really interesting. And then, yeah, I mean, the jaw and the pelvis, like there is, you know, when you give birth, they tell you relax your jaw, right? And then when you kiss a lot, your lips puff up. So it's an erogenous zone, right? So your lips on your mouth can puff up, and so your yoni lips are going to puff up as well as they're caressed and touched. And so these places are so intertwined for us physically and energetically in our bodies, and so deeply connected to our own, you know, freedom and allowing ourselves our own sense of self-expression and truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and so the pussy portraits also, you know, have definitely been kind of a deeper window into loving this part of the body, as well as this part energetically of eros and reclamation and sovereignty around this part of the physical body, as well as this part of the, you know, sexual energy and sensual energy of our bodies as women. And you know, the idea came to me about 10 years ago, but it's just now in the last couple of years that I felt like I was ready to say, okay, I'm going to offer to the world, you know, this level of vulnerability and truth, which includes, you know, with me working with a woman so that then she feels safe to send me a picture of her vulva, right? And have me do a painting of it. And it's such an initiation and such a healing journey for every woman that steps into it, no matter what kind of relationship they have with this part of their body and their being. It's an initiation back into that deep self-love and self-courage, and a look at and an kind of undoing of that Pandora's box, right? So that's been also, you know, brought me a lot of reconnection with that part of myself, and opening up the conversations and the energies around that reclamation has also been so liberating and healing for me. In my own journey. So that's definitely, I feel like, you know, when you asked how did I get here, that's definitely been a piece of it as well. Being bold enough and courageous enough to offer this out and to hear women's stories. You know, the Pussy Project has been this collection of stories, and I've spoken with about 30 women around their relationship with their pussy and their sexuality and their body, and given space for that healing and that story to be told and revealed. Just like this conversation allows us to feel like we're not alone. It allows us to feel like, oh, I also had that experience as a young girl, and I'm also feeling this way. And that allows us to come home to our bodies even more, because then we feel a little more safe to feel those feelings and not feel like they have to be hidden and shamed. And then with that hiding and shaming, we're numbing, right?
Yeah.
Those are all so connected.
Yeah. 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 And I feel so much admiration for you when I see and feel like those projects that you're doing, and those, like I said before, like those portraits are just like, they look totally divine to me and feel divine, and And I love like more examples of seeing like the variety of different vulvas that there are. Like we all
Yes.
have a different vulva, and it, you know,
Yes.
and thinking that, oh, mine is weird looking, and like again, like those layers of shame around how we look and how we feel about our own vulvas and our own bodies. And this just feels like such an incredible opportunity to connect deeper. And I mean, I've said to you, I would love a pussy portrait to like have on my chest of drawers, to be able to like be there in my room, so that when I'm getting ready in the morning, she's like present, and there's this this intimacy there. That and that might sound crazy to some people, but actually to kind of, you know, my mum might say, well, why do you need to like pinpoint this area of your body and put that on you? You know, why have you not got your eyes there? Or but it's to do with where you're starting from, isn't it? And for me, where I was starting from with my pussy was very much like huge disconnection and shame. And so like to be able to continue connecting deeper, and then to have this kind of presence, the visual presence feels like so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been referencing to it kind of like this coat of arms recently, which I don't know, that's what's been coming up. It's like this, because it is a process, right? It's the process of doing the portrait and all that comes up during that time, but it's also the process of your, like you said, your whole life, the story that you had until you got to the point where you were courageous enough to say, yes, I want to do this, and I'm going to do this. And then all that comes in the process of doing that, which for many women feels so much more turned on all of a sudden. You know, they're like, I feel her. I used to think she was ugly, and now I just adore her. You know, it's like this healing pocket to do the portrait itself, and then have the visual of it, which is this emblem of courage. It's emblem of your story. It's, you know, a reflection of the absolute power and beauty that you are uniquely as a woman. Because that's another piece to it, right? Like you said, there's so many different ways the vulva looks. And it is also a body image piece for us as women that's not being talked about, right? We think about, you know, we see the vulvas in the porns, or, you know, in the other things where it's like, that's what it's supposed to look like, and mine doesn't look anything like that. So there's something wrong with mine, and I'm going to hide it. And I think she's ugly. And there's, you know, just, again, these layers of disconnection, disassociation that come from feeling like she doesn't look right. So, and that's such another big piece of this whole project and process, is like each one is unique and beautiful. And that's something to celebrate, right?
Yeah, it really is. And I think that I was talking again to my mum the other day about this, and because she sometimes thinks, she says, you know, why? I think she was speaking to my old headmaster from primary school, and he said, my son is connected with Helen on Facebook. Something about legs wide open. and my mum said, oh yeah, like, oh. And then she said, oh, it's so rude. And he said, oh, not at all. He's Irish. Not at all, not at all. I was like, oh, great. Like he's, you know, he's you can see the value of this. But I said to her, you know, like in our village, like in the center, there's this, the kids call it the Willy statue. It's like this naked guy there, like with his penis. It's like totally fine and normal. And there's like penises everywhere, like, you know, and it feels like the vulva has been sort of just eradicated from the world. And so the more that we can visually bring the vulva back, like, better for me.
Yes, absolutely. Bring it.
Oh,
yes.
Oh, I feel like I could go on and talk more and more. I feel like we're coming to a kind of close.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
I would love to know if there's anything that you feel like you want to express that we haven't talked about, or whether you could also let people know where they can find you and like what's going on in your world right now.
Yeah. 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 Well, such a joy. And of course, I feel like there's, it's so layered, the journey. And I think that when we open up to talk about it, it's like all of these things that we haven't talked about really in so long, that we could go on for hours, right? Talking about it. It's like layer by layer by layer by layer. And I think that's a really important piece for women to know, that there is no end to this, right? There's no like, you're going to get here and that's the goal. And if you have this kind of orgasm or that kind of orgasm, it's any better. Or, it's just, it's this whole process of healing and unfurling like a flower, right? And we're all at different points along the way with that, in alignment with different elements that we're healing and coming to terms with within ourselves, and therefore our bodies feeling more, right? So it's just a journey, and patience and curiosity and self-love feel like the most important pieces to allowing the body to unfurl and allowing the woundings to be able to come forward so they can be held in a way that allows the numbing, right, to undo itself, allows the numbing to start to thaw out. So it's just such a process, and self-love and patience and curiosity just feel like a really sacred triad on this whole journey home.
Yeah. That when you said that, the song that comes to me, I don't know if you know it, and I can't remember who sings it, but it goes like, a rose blooms when she is ready and not a moment too soon.
Mm-hmm.
And I just come back to that
Mm-hmm.
time and time again.
Mm-hmm.
And I've
Mm-hmm.
cried many tears to that song, and just
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's
Yeah.
just it's this blossoming that is just going at its own pace, and the rose over there is going to be like blooming at a different rate, and
Yeah.
there's just
Yes.
there's no rush.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And, we can't force ourselves to be more relaxed. We know that doesn't work for us as women.
No. Or like the mind over matter thing, like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
no.
Yeah, there's just so much that lives in the body. And I think that's that's the place to unfurl. Yeah. And as far as upcoming things, I am just finishing up this Pussy Project interview series, and I am really excited to bring it together in a variety of different ways. But one of the ways I'm going to do this is through a free event that's going to be happening at the end of November. And it's going to be a 3-day event, going really, deeply into remembering our bodies, connecting into our bodies, our womb space. Also, some art around our experience with our own bodies that I'm going to lead women through. And then the third day is going to be a sharing of a slideshow of the different vulva paintings that I've done, while I read aloud these different stories that I've been collecting from women. And so, in celebration of this project, I'm going to be kind of putting together this multimedia event, to share the stories and my paintings at one time. And I think it's going to be really, really moving for women to be able to hear these stories and feel them again, in a sense of inner liberation and inner releasing of shame around things that we might feel like we're the only one, right?
Yeah.
So that is a 3-day event that I'm super excited to be offering. That's going to be happening at the end of November. So I will leave you with a place to sign up for that you can share with your audience. And I'd love for any of you that are interested to come and get closer to being a part of this, and you know, even if that's just as a listener right now, and even if that's just as a quiet observer and listening, you know, it's going to shift things in your body, and that's where it all begins. Yeah, and I also am leaving here a free womb meditation for your listeners to be able to tap into and just start to connect into that part of the body with love and curiosity.
Oh, thank you. That's the first time I've heard you. I know that we talked about the 3-day event that you're doing, but when you shared the details, I was like, oh, just felt this like fire in my belly, but not like a wildfire, like a real like more of a like moving, you know, like you just said. I think it feels really special.
Yeah, it's called
Wow.
Viva la Vulva.
Viva la vulva. I love it. And I think that's really also when you were sharing about how someone might want to just come and listen and observe. And I think we're so conditioned to feel like we need to be doing something in order to, in order for any shifts to happen for us. And actually, this is part of the deconditioning process for us as women, I feel like, and what it is for me, that actually being and just being with the energy and just allowing whatever wants to unravel, and just being there is hugely, has been and continues to be hugely transformative for me.
Oh, yes. So much deconditioning and reconditioning we get to do around that. And also just knowing that it's okay to show up wherever you are, you know, like don't have to be at a certain point along the road, quote unquote, with your relationship with your body or pussy or any of it. You know, it's like we all are coming to this at different points, and there's no comparison. There's no need to be any particular way with it or the word pussy itself or any of that, right? There's just open arms to be a part of this journey, no matter where you find yourself right now.
Yeah. Oh, just feel like warm and fuzzy in my body now.
Yay!
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been so special to chat with you.
Yes, thank you so much for what you're doing, and so great to chat with you as well.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, I will leave it there. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.